Thank you all for joining the September 2nd ARH monthly partner call. We are going to get started in about 30 seconds. Okay, we've got a pretty good crowd here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks again for joining us today at the September 2nd monthly partner call. And we will go through our meeting agreements as usual. Please, thanks in advance for practicing with us. Help foster an inclusive environment. Stay engaged, speak your truth responsibly, listen to understand, be willing to do things differently, and experience discomfort, expect and accept non-closure. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Roberto Franco, who will walk us through today's topics and get us started.
Thanks, Kim. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy September, or I was going to say fall, but I guess that's probably too early. I don't want to scare anyone. But also, if your life is kind of marked by the beginning of school year or college, I hope that goes well. I think in many schools today is sort of the first day. All the best to mom and dad or parents that have kids in the school. And here we go, another school year. And but it's great to see you all today. And as Kim mentioned, we have a few topics to update, share with you, and then open up for any questions that I'm sure you have about all of this. So first up, transactions, and this is what we're taking to the Housing Stability Council this month or this coming Friday. We have two transactions, 4% PAB and GAP, and one of them is Barber Boulevard that I believe came in through one of our, if you remember, the NOFAs, that's still one of our projects. And then Jamie Court, we're recommending the 4% and private activity bond for those two projects this Friday. As I was looking at the project, especially Jamie Court, I believe we took it to council in April for a reservation of GAP resources. So April, in less than, I don't know, 6 months, now it's getting to closing. And that is I guess what I was going to just share, that when we talk about readiness for projects, it varies. I mean, for every project. But when a project is ready to move and the resources are there, it can really move fast. And I think I said Jamie Court is one of those that if we went to April council in April, and now in September is gonna get to closing. That's one of I think the benefits and what we're seeing out of the Orca and the managed pipeline. So we're happy to see them, and congratulations to those to the sponsors making it their 1 inch more to getting the construction started. Then we have Orca recommendations. If you're able to see the council packet, there's a slew. Actually there are 10 Orca recommended projects that were taken to council this Friday. 5 of them are GAP only, and 5 of them are GAP and 4%. I think that what this means, in order to get there, we've began looking at pooling resources. I mean, that's one way that we've gotten there. You'll see some of that talk about pooling resources in the Orca update memo that is going to council, as well. So by doing that and pulling all of the resources and fund projects from the wait list as quick as we can, September really marks what I'd say a significant month for us, because we've been able to put out the resources within a period of 2 months. So August council, September council, and um, good and bad in the sense that with the resources that we're recommending, the gap resources, especially lift resources, that we allocated by regions and set asides are fully subscribed pretty much. And that leaves a challenge for all of us. What's next? There are still some some lift resources available, especially for culturally specific organizations that set aside. But I do know that there's probably 5 or 6 projects in the workings that could potentially also use up all of what we have in set aside. There is still some PSH resources left, and similar as the CSOs, there's several projects working on their applications, finalizing them, and we could also see beginning to use and those resources going down as well. Uh, so I think that, yeah, on those we'll know soon. Maybe in October, yeah, maybe October, November, we'll know soon those uh, those projects, if we're taking them or not, to Housing Stability Council for a reservation of funds. You will see after the council, as we begin the practice, we'll update the wait list as well as the resources that we have available. And you can see in the updates that we have now a little bit more details in it, so that you can see what criteria or how we're using that wait list to move some of the projects forward. It's still the same waitlist policy. We haven't changed it. I think the major change that we had done was really to set asides and pull in the resources in making it work. Otherwise, it's still the same waitlist policy that we had established early on there. Um, the for projects that again are haven't gone to council or maybe still working on them, or if the project is still farther down the list. And I think the natural question that I'm sure many of you may have is, so what happens? What's next? And as you all well know, our investment are allocated every regular session, every biennial. So the earliest that we know for sure is the next regular session that we can get additional resources. However, there are several legislative implementation that have funding that we are setting up, so they're not there yet. So we'll look at those. We'll look to see if any of them make sense for some of the projects still, or that will remain on the wait list. Or if it farther down the line, if one of the projects that were taken in August or in September, for whatever reason, it's no longer feasible, that we get those resources back, and then we'll go to the wait list and see what is it that we can fund. I'll stop there for a minute. I'm sure if there are any questions, but I think there's some other tie into another topic that ties in into some of this.
Feel free to put your questions in the chat or use raise hand. You have anything you want to ask? Thanks.
All right. Seeing none, and or at least put it in the chat, but
Put it in the chat.
then we can go to the next topic
Oh,
that we
we do
have.
have a hand, Roberto.
Well, I'll stop there.
All right.
Andrea, hello.
Andrea, hey.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I was having trouble finding the raise hand function. And this might come up later, but wondering if you'll be touching at all, Roberto, on the preservation resources that are currently the 50 million that's currently under review to understand the specific uses allowed and how that relates to any projects that are currently on the preservation waitlist?
Yeah, well, might as well talk a little bit about it now. But
Okay.
yeah, we're working on sort of on a communication on how best that we think that those resources will be utilized. So no announcements, no final decision has been made about them, Andrea. So I don't have any specifics to give you other than saying it's coming hopefully soon, but that's one of the other resources, along with what I said about the legislative investment, like housing for older adults that we need to implement as well. So I think I will not say that they'll come out together, but along those efforts of funding implementation, that we'll see preservation coming out as well. And yes, we would look at that again from the wait list to see where we are. So that's what we would use, just to make it clear. We're not opening, we're not bringing different projects, but really based in moving projects out of the wait list. That's the plan.
Okay, thank you. And did you say, I apologize if I missed it, when you think that that legislative implementation information, including preservation, um, would be told beyond internal communication at OHCS?
Yeah, the some of the legislative investments may have different timing because some of
Mhm.
them are farther along than others. I'm thinking the senior housing, for example, may take a little longer to set it up. I cannot speak specifically about when the preservation will come, but again, it had been part of our legislative implementation, so we're
Mhm.
looking at that as well. But the timing I will be different. I just don't know when exactly.
Okay, thank you.
We got a question in the chat. Do you have any indicators if the land acquisition program will open up?
I personally don't, but I wonder if any of the staff in program resources has that information. If not, Stephanie, we can also reply to you directly if we have enough resources that have come back that we can reopen the lab program. Okay. One last item I was just going to touch on briefly was on the private activity bonds change in the threshold, the federal change that created the opportunity to do 25% instead of the 50%, as well as with some of the other investments that I mentioned briefly. We're also trying to finalize our communication on the requirements for PAB. One thing we know for projects in the pipeline that had elected using 50% or 55% rather, which is our policy, we're not we're not going to change and ask them to reduce or change their threshold to 25%. One, because we don't want to delay production. We want the production to continue. Second, because we would not have gap resources to fill the gap that the reduced PAB would utilize. So I just will come out with that communication, but I'm sharing it here that that's our general direction. We're not going to do that. For new projects is where we have to come up with a way that can accommodate projects that can work maybe between a range of 30% and 55%. There are actually a couple of the 4% projects that have gap that are going to council that I think are utilizing less than the 55% that we have, but that's because they came in at a time where we have the resources to work with. But for existing projects in the pipeline and future projects in 26, 27, we'll need to figure out and work on strategies that can help step in or provide that gap needed if a project decides to use less PAB than we've normally done. With that, also, I think it's worth mentioning that if you have the ability to do a project with 4% and PAB only, by all means, consider that. Or if you have a gap that is not OHCS or state gap that can make it work, by all means, consider that. We do have sufficient cap for PAB to make that work. And in fact, I think we're seeing a few of them already, or a couple of them are already gone to council as a 4% and PAB only. So don't don't discard that as a possibility if there is a means of doing it.
Pause for any questions. And thank you for Fatima for responding about the land acquisition program that reopened in July 2025, and a link to the webpage where you can find that information. Any additional questions for Roberto based on anything we've discussed so far? Okay. We are going to move on to the next part of our agenda. So for today, we are fortunate to have our expert in rulemaking at OHCS, JC Davis, here with us today to talk a little bit about legislative implementation and, linkage to rulemaking activities and how to get involved and how to track rulemaking activities at OHCS. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up her slides and turn it over to JC.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Can you hear me all right? Awesome. Fantastic. Hello, everyone. As Kim mentioned, my name is JC Davis, and I use she, her pronouns. I have the privilege of leading and supporting our department's administrative rule policy. Perfect. Thank you. Just getting over to the slides.
Sorry about that.
No worries. There you
Okay.
are. Perfect. Great. Thank you. There are quite a few questions I've already heard this afternoon about legislative implementation and where we are in the process, when we're going to have a lot of these dates and places to engage. And that's why I was invited to come and speak at our partner call today. So happy to be here. I will also include, I just dropped in the chat, our administrative rule website. This is linked on the OHCS main website. We're one click away from the main landing page. But your administrative rule website here is going to house a ton of information that I'm going to talk about today. And at the end, I'll also include my contact information. So if there's something I do not cover today and you have questions or want to get involved, you'll have my information in order to do that. Next slide, please. Outstanding. So what is our rulemaking process? A lot of us that work around government or within government are very familiar with the administrative rules and the Administrative Procedures Act, which governs how we have to go through our rulemaking process here. Now, the legislator, while as robust and as helpful as they are, there are a lot of bills and statutes that come into the legislative session that lack the details, right? That don't really get us to where we've got our funding mechanism. Now, how is this policy going to be implemented? What is it going to look like in community? And that's where our administrative rules get to kind of fill in the blanks. So our rules are very, very important, not only for our department, but for the general public and all of you, because it creates that consistency, the transparency around how these public funds and programs will be structured, and also how to get involved. They describe all of our processes and the terms that we use and any kind of eligibility or grievance processes that you may be also eligible for. They also hold us accountable in a place that we're going to hold our programs to that guideline in the same way that you will be expected in any kind of other legal background. Now, within the spirit of the law, or the APA, I reference a few things here, and one of them is our Attorney General's Administrative Law Manual. This is a pretty robust manual that's distributed and published by the Department of Justice here in the state of Oregon, and that's what tells me how to do my job. And within that, they really talk about the spirit of administrative rules. And this is why I feel like I probably have one of the best jobs at our department, y'all. Because while we're developing these very robust and informative and equitable policies, your administrative rule process is the pausing place. It is a carve out to ensure that we have talked to community, that we have reported back to you all about what we're doing in our policy creation and vetting our impacts before we make anything permanent. Now, there's also a couple places that I mentioned the Oregon Revised Statutes here, where we talk about not maintaining a minimum commitment with community, but to the maximum available resources for community engagement spaces here. So our department is really leaning in to the engagement side of our rulemaking process. There is a lot of places where our general public and those impacted are available to come in and provide your feedback. And so I want to talk a little bit more about how that feedback looks and where you can find it. Next slide, please. So earlier this year, our governor had put out a press release. And I have it linked on the top of this slide. I'll also include it in the chat real quick. This press release by Governor Kotex told us in their executive branch that we are now required to have a lot of additional transparency requirements. So not only are we filing rules and we're publishing them with the Secretary of State's office and distributing the public and legislative notices, we are also required now to house on our OHCS website a lot of additional information, to include the rule filings, all of the materials that we're using in order to get to that policy decision. Any feedback or comments provided by you all, we now have a requirement to host those comments on our website and also have a department response attached to those. There is a lot around calendaring so that you all can understand where we're going to be able to start our rulemaking processes around certain program areas. And this is hopeful to keep you all as informed and as involved as possible. And then starting in February of 2026, we will also add into our website any kind of legislative impact that's going to create a rulemaking need here at the department. So we are continuing to bolster our level of transparency here to also include proposed drafted bills and their impacts to our administrative rules. There is a, on the rules website, there is a small drop down on the left-hand side. And in that small drop down under rules and records, you'll see a rules calendar. That rules calendar is really where you're going to be able to see all of these different questions that you're asking about. When is preservation going to be up? What about LAP? What about our LIHTC offering? What about the senior housing opportunity that we talked about, right? All of that we have been given within the legislature, we're going to have to then amend or adopt or even repeal some of our administrative rules to align for legal sufficiency purposes. And on that rules calendar, as the leadership of our department is going through and making those decisions around prioritization and timelines, all of that will be transparent on our rules calendar. We post every time we have open comment periods. We post when we have events around a rules advisory committee. We just had one today that I'll briefly talk about. And then there'll also be additional leaning into anything that we have planned for this entire calendar year. I will tell you all, I have been in a lot of conversations over the last few weeks, helping our team really designate some feasible and structured timelines to their plans. And we will be launching that information as soon as possible. And I highly recommend you taking a look at some of the links I've dropped in and maybe bookmarking some of these for future reference. As I mentioned, this press release that came out from the governor, it was distributed in in February, and all of these new transparency requirements became effective in May of this year. So if any of these links don't work, I am your girl. Please let me know. I will make sure you all have all of the information you need. Next slide, please. This is just a quick snapshot of that rules calendar. We are working with our Smart Sheets application. This is how we track and try to create these visual dashboards of the information that we have. And if it's in green, that means we've already knocked it out, or we're in the process of doing that with all of the whites. As I mentioned, August is the last one that's listed on your current screenshot, but we will have a ton of additional legislative implementation and projects planned coming out of this next month. So keep that in mind, and then you'll be able to see when we're tracking a notice of proposed rulemaking versus any other rule filing, it is because during that noticing process is when it's open for comment. It is when we're hosting a rules advisory committee on those changes. It's when we're going to convene a public hearing to have a listening session with community as well. So really important to kind of stay up to date with what OHCS is doing. We will have all of these estimated dates put on our website, with a huge disclaimer, y'all, that these also change. We recommend you kind of keeping updated. Staying up to date would also include signing up for the administrative rule announcements on our e-news website. So if you sign up for the partner call announcements, you can also check a box, and you can get announcements anytime we have administrative rule announcements as well. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to leave this QR code up a little bit because, like I mentioned, you all can sign up for these administrative rule announcements by using your phone, or you can go on the OHCS website and sign up for the e-news updates. I'll briefly mention that we just had a RAC this afternoon, and it was for the statewide shelter program, where we had a RAC of over 25 folks come in, and they provided a really robust conversation about how our department is going to be implementing that statewide shelter program. All of our virtual spaces are convened with a link that's accessible that you don't have to pay for. It'll either be on Team Webinar or on Zoom. So most folks are pretty familiar with our virtual community. If there is a need or a request to have any kind of rules engagement spaces in person, we're happy to accommodate those ones as well. But this last one, we did 2 hours with this RAC, and we also had elected officials in our RAC space as well. So they were able to really understand what community was saying, where our limitations were, and to also ensure that legislative intent was really captured during the policy making process. Some of our virtual spaces always give us curveballs, and we always have a team of folks on the back end of these engagement spaces. So if you're ever having issues accessing any of our virtual events, please reach out and let us know. We want to make sure that our rulemaking process and all of our events are as transparent and as accessible to everyone. And I will have one more slide, I think, Kim, at the end. And I also want to put my email address in our chat. If you all have any questions about our administrative rules, our process, how to get involved, feel free to reach out to me directly. I also have my information listed on the slide. My cell phone doesn't always get the best reception. I do tend to think that email is a little bit more consistent, but feel free to give me a call or an email if I can help with anything else. And please note, we will have additional dates around implementation from everything within the legislative session, hopefully at the latter part of this month into October. So very exciting news to come up. If there's any questions, please let me know. But Kim, that's all I have today.
Thanks, JC. Any questions about rulemaking advisory committees? Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, JC. Appreciate you coming today and providing all that great information about how folks can get involved and track the rulemaking aspects. We are about done today. Just wanted to remind folks about a few things upcoming. As Roberto mentioned earlier, we will be sending out communication about a number of things, including the new federal LIHTC PAB test. And so that technical advisory will be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Along with that, in September, we do have the Housing Oregon Conference, September 15th and 16th. And I'll pause and see. I know Kevin's here. Do you want to say anything about the Housing Oregon Conference, Kevin? Or drop any links in the chat?
Sure. We are just about sold out. So if you haven't gotten your ticket, please get your ticket. We have about 1,100 people signed up. So it should be a great time to connect with others in the industry in person. It's September 15th and 16th at the Oregon Convention Center. And I'll drop a link where you can still get a ticket. But make sure you get it in the next couple of days.
Great. 1,100 people. Wow.
It's just about capacity. So, yeah.
Amazing. Great. Well, thanks, Kevin, for that reminder. And we will, OHCS has a number of sessions that we're either leading or participating in at the conference. So a number of our staff and leadership will be there as well. And we're really excited to connect with all of you. Our next ARH partner call is in September. So maybe it's like a leap year thing where we've got some calls, some months where we're doing multiple partner calls. However the calendar falls. So we will see you again at our next partner call on September 29th. For the consolidated plan. That survey will be open through this month, and we're going to be bringing some QR codes to the Housing Oregon Conference as well to try to encourage participation. But that's all we have today, and I'll pause and ask if anyone has any remaining questions or additional discussion topics for today, and I'll turn it over to Roberto for a closing. But pause here and see if there's anything left that folks have for questions. All right. Roberto, closing remarks or anything left to add?
No, I think I just want to wish everyone have a great September. And I know it's still warm, hot today here in Salem, but it doesn't, anyway, it'll get, what's that saying? Fall is coming, but so it always comes. So anyway, happy September. Great to see you, many of you today. And let's keep on working and getting the housing built. And thanks for being partners, helping us get through our resources and yeah, getting those projects on the ground. So with that, thank you everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks all.